At the very edge of the forgotten village of Blackwood, there stood a house. It wasn't just any old house. This one was different. Crooked and dark, it slumped against the gray sky like a tired old monster. Its windows were like empty staring eyes, and the paint peeled off the walls like sunburnt skin. The villagers didn't like to talk about it. They called it the Screaming Wall. They said that on the coldest nights, you could hear terrible screams coming from inside. Not human screams. Something worse. Something trapped. They whispered stories about the house, tales passed down from their grandparents, each one scarier than the last. The legends were always the same. They said the house was alive. It breathed. It watched. And it was always hungry. Long ago, a family had lived there, but one morning, they were just gone, vanished into thin air. The only thing left behind was a strange, dark handprint pressed deep into the living room wall. Over the years, more people had disappeared. A lost traveler, a curious teenager. Each time, a new handprint would appear on that same wall, a silent trophy for the hungry house. The wall was now covered in them, a collection of lost souls. The villagers knew to stay away. They would walk on the other side of the street, their eyes fixed firmly ahead, pretending the house wasn't there at all. Maya was new to Blackwood. She came from the big city for a summer visit with her aunt. The city was loud and full of lights, but Blackwood was quiet and full of shadows. She wasn't scared of shadows. She thought the villagers were silly for being afraid of an old broken-down house. To her, it was just wood and bricks. It couldn't hurt anyone. The stories they told sounded like campfire tales, made up to scare little kids. She would listen to their warnings with a small, knowing smile, thinking they were just trying to frighten the new girl from the city. But the stories didn't frighten her. They made her curious. One evening, as the sun began to bleed across the horizon, painting the clouds orange and purple, Maya stood across the street from the house. It looked even spookier in the dying light. The shadows stretched from its broken porch like long, dark fingers reaching out for her. The wind whistled through the shattered window panes, and for a moment, it almost sounded like a faint, mournful cry. A shiver, cold and sharp, traced its way down her spine. The house didn't just look old, it looked evil. It seemed to be waiting for something, or for someone. And Maya felt a strange, irresistible pull, as if the house itself was calling her name. That night, Maya sat with some of the village kids around a small bonfire. The flames danced and crackled, sending sparks flying up into the starry sky. They were telling scary stories, of course, and all the stories ended at the same place, the house on Whispering Lane. An older boy named Leo, trying to act tough, pointed a trembling finger toward the dark silhouette of the house. "No one has ever spent a whole night in there," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "They say the walls move. They say the house chooses who it wants, and once it chooses you, you belong to it forever." Maya just laughed. She didn't believe in ghosts or hungry houses. It was all just superstition. "That sounds like a bunch of nonsense," she announced, her voice clear and steady. "It's just an old, empty building. What's there to be scared of? A few rats and some spiders?" The other kids exchanged nervous glances. They had grown up with the fear of that house, a fear that was as real to them as the ground beneath their feet. Maya's bravery seemed foolish, even dangerous. She saw the fear in their eyes, and it made her feel powerful. She was different. She was from the city. She wasn't afraid of the dark. "I bet you wouldn't dare go inside," Leo challenged, his pride stung by her dismissal. "I bet you wouldn't even last an hour." A hush fell over the group. The crackling of the fire was the only sound. This was it. The dare hung in the air, thick and heavy. Maya looked from Leo's smug face to the dark shape of the house. A part of her felt a flicker of fear, a tiny voice in her head screaming at her to say no. But another, louder part of her, the part that hated being called scared, took over. She stood up, brushing the dirt from her jeans with a confident smirk. "It's a deal," Maya declared, her voice ringing with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "I'll spend the whole night in there, and in the morning you'll see. It's just a house." The other kids gasped. Her aunt had warned her. The village elder had warned her. Everyone had warned her. But Maya was stubborn. She grabbed a flashlight from her bag and started walking toward Whispering Lane, leaving her new friends staring after her with wide, terrified eyes. The moon was a pale sliver in the sky, offering little light as she approached the creaking, groaning gate of the Screaming Wall. The front door was heavy and swollen with dampness. Maya had to use all her strength to push it open. It let out a long, agonizing creak, like a painful groan from deep within the house. The moment she stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her with a deafening boom. The sound echoed through the cavernous space, and the sudden, complete darkness was suffocating. Maya fumbled for her flashlight, her heart starting to beat like a drum against her ribs. She clicked it on, and a thin beam of light cut through the gloom, revealing a room coated in a thick, grey blanket of dust and cobwebs. She swept the light across the room. Old furniture was draped in white sheets, looking like a silent audience of ghosts. The air was cold and musty, smelling of decay and something else. Something metallic and unpleasant. Then she heard it. A faint scratching sound. Scrape, scrape. It was coming from the walls. It sounded like fingernails dragging slowly, deliberately across old wood. Maya froze, aiming her flashlight at the wall where the sound was loudest. There was nothing there but peeling, stained wallpaper. But the scratching continued, moving around her, seeming to come from every direction at once. It was as if something was inside the walls, trying to get out. Suddenly, the floor beneath her feet began to vibrate. It was a low, deep rumbling that seemed to shake the very foundations of the house. Maya stumbled, catching herself on a dust-covered table. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she watched the wall in front of her. It was moving. The wallpaper seemed to ripple and bulge, as if the wall was breathing, taking a slow, deep breath. The scratching grew louder, more frantic, turning into a desperate clawing sound. The room felt like it was shrinking, the walls slowly, almost imperceptibly closing in on her. The house was alive. The stories were true. Fear, cold and absolute, finally gripped her. This was not just an old house. It was a trap. She spun around, shining her light back toward the front door, ready to run, to escape this living nightmare. But the door was gone. Where the heavy wooden door had been just moments before, there was now only a solid, unbroken wall. The same peeling wallpaper, the same dark stains. There was no handle, no hinges, no outline of a door at all. It had vanished. She was sealed inside. The scratching stopped, and a chilling silence filled the air. A silence that was somehow worse than the noise. Out of the suffocating silence, a new shape began to form on the wall in front of her. It was a shadow, but it wasn't her shadow. It was tall and thin, with long twisted limbs. The shadow seeped out of the wallpaper like black ink bleeding into paper. It grew darker and more defined until it looked like a figure trapped just beneath the surface of the wall. It had no face, just a dark void where features should have been. A voice, raspy and dry like rustling dead leaves, slithered out from the shadow. It wasn't a sound that came to her ears. It was a thought planted directly inside her head. "You are home now," Maya screamed, a raw, piercing sound of pure terror. She backed away, her flashlight beam trembling violently, but there was nowhere to go. The shadowy figure pulsed, and the walls groaned again, inching closer. "You will not leave," the voice whispered in her mind. "No one ever leaves. You will become a part of the wall, a part of me." Maya could feel the coldness of the house seeping into her bones, a deep, unnatural chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. She felt her energy draining away, as if the house itself was feeding on her fear. She turned and ran, blindly, desperately through the darkness. She crashed through rotting doorways into other rooms that were just as cold and just as empty. But every room was the same. Every exit was sealed. The walls seemed to shift and change, creating a maze with no escape. The shadow was always there, just at the edge of her flashlight beam, a constant silent pursuer. The voice echoed in her head, repeating its terrible promise. "You belong to the wall now. Forever." Her breath came in ragged sobs as the walls closed in, the space around her shrinking until she could feel the rough, cold plaster against her back and chest. The next morning, the sun rose over a quiet, still Blackwood. A small group of villagers, led by a worried Leo, cautiously approached the house on Whispering Lane. The front door stood slightly ajar, creaking softly in the morning breeze. They peered inside, calling Maya's name, but only silence answered. Steeling themselves, they entered. The house was empty. There was no sign of Maya, no flashlight, no footprints in the dust. It was as if she had never been there at all. But on the infamous living room wall, among the collection of old faded handprints, there was a new one. It was small and fresh, pressed deep into the plaster, and scratched into the wall just beneath it were two faint words, "I'm home."